I don't think anyone would argue that safety and security are two of the most important aspects when browsing the web. That should be obvious, but sometimes it needs to be said out loud. The amount of surveillance, limitation, and data mining done on your personal info on a daily basis is upsetting, to say the least. Most of the time, you're not even aware of it happening, and finding the right solution is not always obvious. That is, unless you use Surfshark VPN and its easy one-for-all solution. With a click of a button on Windows, Android, or Apple products, Surfshark turns you into an anonymous and hard-to-track user, giving you more freedom on the internet, keeps you away from prying eyes, and prevents companies from doing very stupid things like geo-blocking. I'm pretty sure you had that experience of trying to watch something on YouTube or something's not available on Netflix, all because you live in another country. Surfshark makes that a non-issue. Start up their service, choose your location, refresh the page, and bam, you're finally tasting forbidden fruit that really shouldn't be forbidden in the first place. If I want to start getting into Doctor Who, why the hell does it matter if I'm American? Those that use the link in the description below and enter the special code Johnny will not only get 83% off their initial order, but the next 3 months are also completely free. Thanks to Surfshark VPN for the sponsor, and thank you for helping support this channel. Let's continue on with the show. The holiday rush is upon us if it hasn't already started already, and hopefully you guys are doing everything online this year, because it's not a very good idea to be smothering each other for those last minute deals. The hot item of the year, and likely the next couple of years, is the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. Retailers are only selling so much, the pandemic is making it extra tricky, and scalpers are having a fucking field day cashing in for Christmas. I managed to get a PS5 for myself mainly because I felt I needed to given what I do for a living, besides being a Sony consumer. But for those still trying to make this Christmas, it's a little more special, please just be careful out there. I understand the next generation is here, but console launches are almost always on the bear side. So as a consumer, please don't take any unnecessary risks just to get that new age George Foreman grill on your entertainment center. That said, today we'll be popping our PlayStation 5 cherry with a new Spider-Man game. Though don't feel left out if you only have a PlayStation 4, the game is available on both consoles. There are some differences in performance, namely the PS4 version having muddier textures on faraway objects, load times, and the occasional bout of spider brick. But I've heard from a few that unless you're an absolute stickler for optimal performance, getting the game on the PlayStation 4 is still a viable option. It is still perfectly playable. Those load times on the PlayStation 5 though, I still can't get used to it. Seriously, this is the fast travel. God, we have a bright future ahead of us, if this is just a sample of what future consoles are capable of rendering in real time. Some part of me missed out on the subway loading screens, they just radiated personality, but there's literally no time for them here. Then I found out there was an option to re-enable these, and you know what? Yeah, sure, I love they gave PS5 players that option. What a time we live in where we're getting the choice to leave load screens on. The haptic feedback on the new DualShock 5 was also great for the hands. Admittedly, it was something I noticed less and less as I continued playing the game, so I don't think it's that big of a deal, and the Nintendo Switch has already been doing it for about 3 years now. But if this game is anything to go by for PlayStation owners, we can be in for some real immersive gameplay and storytelling in the future. Though the selection of games at launch was limited, and assuming you don't care for backwards compatibility, to learn that Spider-Man Miles Morales was included in that lineup was a cool silver lining. I loved the original PS4 game, one of the best Spider-Man games I ever played, one of the best superhero games I ever played. I put it up there with the Batman Arkham games, and it was a nice bonus for me to learn that the copy of Miles Morales I bought came with a remastered version of this game optimized for PlayStation 5. And that's great, but sort of preaching to the choir here, Peter's revamped face is awful. I'm sorry, it's just bad. There was nothing wrong with the original model, and for them to just give him plastic surgery because they wanted something, I don't know, closer to Tom Holland from MCU? Is that what's happening here? It was just a dumb decision. Doesn't affect the game in the slightest, it is still fantastic, but it's something I have to notice every time Peter takes his mask off. But we're not here to talk about the original Spider-Man, we're focusing on his protege. Until the movie Into the Spider-Verse, the only thing I knew about Miles was that he was an up-and-coming Spider-Man from the Ultimate Universe? A fan favorite from what I could gather, and I saw the appeal, if Into the Spider-Verse was anything to go by. Sure, I could just say that he was part Puerto Rican, and I felt represented, but for less surface-level reasons, I thought the kid was just a really endearing character, one that I wanted to see overcome his hardships as he was learning to become a new Spider-Man. Miles Morales was an element in the previous games, but before he got his spider bite, he was just a high school kid with a knack for technology and sneaking around dangerous areas. Not the most visually stimulating gameplay, but we knew that the kid was destined for greater things. He may not have the experience or the know-how yet, but in the shoes of Miles, helping him become the Spider-Man is capable of was a great way of enticing me. But was this game a sequel, a spin-off, a tie-in? The lower than normal price tag made me think a glorified expansion. The game is $50 at base, assuming you're not getting the Ultimate Edition that also came with the remastered version of the original PS4 game. And before we get into the plot summary, I'll just say right now, yeah, it's a glorified expansion. The Galaxy 2 to Galaxy 1. No real reason to swing into this now unless you're really down with playing as Miles Morales. Not to say the game doesn't have its own merits, but this isn't going from Arkham Asylum to Arkham City, if you catch my drift. Let's cover that story real quick, and since it's new, I'll leave you a nifty timestamp here that I'll make sure it's accurate this time as opposed to the last video. Sorry about that, I completely forgot to take the sponsorship into account. But you could use that to fast travel your way past the summary, get yourself a sample of those PS5 load screens at work. It's Christmas time in Harlem. New York City is getting ready to celebrate the holidays, with things beginning to stabilize since the last game's incident involving the Sinister Six and that whole Devil's Breath ordeal. After suffering his fated spider bite during the last game's DLC, Miles is slowly becoming more capable as a new age web-slinger thanks to the tutelage of Peter Parker. In fact, Peter is so sure of Miles' training that he's perfectly willing to leave New York in his capable hands after the two manage to thwart the unexpected breakout of Rhino together as a team. With that out of the way, Peter travels abroad to spend some time with Mary Jane. Probably got the idea from Tony Stark in Spider-Man Homecoming. But then things start to turn south for Miles not too long after. As soon as the holiday celebration is over, the most obviously evil corporate executive named Simon Krieger shows up and promises that with his company Roxxon, the people of New York will soon have a clean, renewable energy source named Nuform that is in no way unstable and not dangerous in any way. On top of that, there's also this underground gang called the Underground that see Roxxon for the evil corporation that it is and plans to use any means necessary to get the job done, including harming innocents, which is why, they're just not straight up good guys. But then things get even hairier when Miles learns that the leader of the Underground is a longtime friend of his named Finn, who is hell-bent on avenging her brother who was killed while trying to sabotage Nuform's development some odd years back after learning of its harmful effects on human life. I honestly thought this dude was going to come back as Dr. Manhattan when I saw his death, but he never did, and I was sort of disappointed. But here's the thing, the general plot of this game, how everything plays out, pretty generic. Like the last game, you can see how things are going to go a mile away, and in several ways, it's a very similar plot to the last game. Just replace Sable International with Roxxon, Devil's Breath with Nuform, and the Inner Demons with the Underground, with Miles' friend Finn taking the role of this game's Dr. Octopus with how her story proceeds. She's very trusting of Miles too, which makes it more tragic. I mean, when Miles pretends to join the Underground to gain more intel on Roxxon and to keep a closer eye on Finn, she doesn't even check him for a wire. You could be a spy for all you know, Finn. For a leader, she's sort of naive. Rhino even makes a return later, but since Jimmy Johns wasn't offering any more sponsorships, he had to get one from Roxxon instead. But as before, and I feel it's more emphasized here, the general story doesn't really matter. It's more about the personal growth of Miles Morales, balancing life between being a high schooler who looks out for his friends and neighbors and doing scavenger hunts 5,000 miles in the sky, and then there's being Spider-Man, who not only protects the people of the city, but those he holds near and dear to him. The struggles of Miles Morales and his journey to overcome them, or at least learning to cope with complicated situations out of his control, is the real story. The stuff with Finn, the strained relationship with Miles' uncle Aaron, who's secretly a mass mercenary named the Prowler working for Roxxon, Miles' mom's campaign for city council and how that makes Miles a little uneasy given how he lost his father in the last game. The narrative is packed with nuance that I absolutely love, and rife with social commentary that's not so subtle, admittedly, but it's things that need to be said and highlighted in an age of not only the Black Lives Matter movement and the Trump administration. I know just mentioning those is enough for some people to scoff or roll their eyes, but the parallels are right in your face, and yeah, it can be seen as ham-fisted. You can make the argument for that, maybe, but it's a necessary element given the character, the demographic for said character, and because if done right, can make for an excellent platform to get a message across without being too subliminal. Sometimes you gotta be loud for people to stop and listen. I don't normally dive that deep into the subtext of the plot, but the overarching story, I feel now more than ever, is just the foundation given how basic the setup is. Still more than serviceable, if a little too samey from before, but there are more layers to it than just what's being offered on the surface, and that's what really matters. To get back to what I was getting into earlier though, about how this is basically just an expansion of the original PS4 game, yeah, if we're just talking length here, it only took me about 7 hours to get to the credits, with minimal sidetracking. It's like all the DLC campaigns combined into one experience. So that's about half the size of the first game, not counting the DLC. The number of side quests themselves have shrunk, and there aren't many boss battles, so the ones here are fucking great. Miles only has about half the gadgets Peter did for combat and stealth, and while there's still a healthy number of suits to obtain, it isn't as much as the selection Peter had before. But gonna interject real quick there, because while the number of suits available is smaller, yes, this game has the Spider-Verse suit that also comes with mods that allow you to mimic the animation style and frame rate of the movie, and it is fucking incredible. I had this one on for a while before I decided to switch out. My god, I just love seeing it in action, it's so good. And then there's the Bodega Cat suit, and after unlocking this, nothing else matters. The cat is named Spider-Man, it's got a little mask too. No fucking way a cat would ever stay inside a backpack like that for more than a microsecond, but I'm willing to compromise realism in my Spider-Man game. Oh, he even joins you for combo finishers. Makes you wonder if all cats have that potential. Get that motherfucker! motherfucker! Comparing Miles to Peter, there are some differences. Miles is a Spider-Man in training, and this is not only reflected by his smaller number of gadgets, but his combat finesse. You're still zipping around all over the place at lightning speed, and the dexterity you have at your disposal is still superhuman. But in terms of raw power, there is something about Miles that feels weaker, more inexperienced. Hell, you can see it in his body language. A detail I love to death is when he does his perch takedown in stealth sections. How sometimes when he's yanking up a goon, he momentarily loses his balance before regaining his composure. That right there is a good summation of how Miles compares to Peter. It does take a little longer to drop basic goons, and this game doesn't ease up on the amount you face, of different varieties too. Guys with guns, guys with swords, guys with shields that are the worst in groups because they just have to be so fucking special and require a more careful approach, assholes. Big dudes, agile dudes, dudes with rocket launchers, Miles is in for the fight of his life, but unlike Peter, he's got two incredible equalizers. The first is his bioelectricity. What was it called again? His Venom strike. Yeah, I know that probably confused some people. You hear Venom in the context of Spider-Man, you think this dude. But no, it's something completely different here. You ever watch JoJo? It's basically Hanma, and I can't not think that, and yes, I do watch JoJo. More on that next year. Anyway, Miles can discharge an electrical current when his meter fills up enough, and then he can either smack the fuck out of someone close by, like those annoying underground goons with the fucking Hulk hands. I gotta hate those guys. Or you can make a dash and stun multiple goons at once for good crowd control. But later on, after progressing through enough story, you can get a level 3 charge and just blast everything to shit, instantly taking out everything around you. It's Chaos Blast from Shadow the Hedgehog that also completely refills your health. It makes certain combat challenges and crimes in progress a total cakewalk, and filling the energy meter takes little to no effort at all. So feel free to spam the hell out of these techniques. The second skill is his camouflage, just straight up goes invisible. Absolutely breaks stealth sections in half. I think there's only one type of goon that can see through it, but everyone else is none the wiser, free to be taken down or smacked in the face without even getting a punch in. It doesn't last forever, but the more actions you do while invisible, the faster the meter drains. But upgrades can soften the blow to this big time, and assuming you're not in any rush, it is extremely easy to abuse given how little time it takes for the meter to refill. So yeah, Miles may not be as crafty as Peter, but with his Venom powers and camouflage, he doesn't need to be. Combat altogether is just as satisfying as before, and these new techniques add an extra crunch to your approach. Seriously, I love using the Venom moves as soon as they're available because they're so visually satisfying to see in action. I do wish that there were more gadgets for some more unique combat, but this is more than fine, and I think it helps that this game isn't as long for it to get stale. There are still crimes you can stop as soon as you learn of them, punching the shit out of goons, stopping car chases from getting out of hand, or knocking folks off rooftops in a completely non-lethal way, I'm sure. The one type of quest that didn't jive with too much was the audio tracking stuff. Like, it's no different than the Riddler puzzles in the Arkham games. You're given a hint, you find a solution, lather, rinse, repeat, and you get some more backstory. The incentive is nice, but it was a little finicky trying to properly find the right distance between you and the source of the audio. Also, hey Spider-Man, want to go help out the local shelter? Nah man, I just want to go listen to some boats. The map will eventually get crammed with the same sort of busy work the last game had. Combat challenges, stealth challenges, scavenger hunts for experience and skill points so that you can upgrade your abilities. Thankfully, there's no screwball to be seen or heard here, though the little animations that play whenever you finish a side mission reminds me a little too much of her, so thanks Genki, you little shit. Nah, I don't really mean that. Genki is a great friend of Miles. He always has your back with tech support, helping you lay out the map when you're inside buildings, and his banter with Miles is sweet, if a little dorky. He's also the one responsible for installing this app on your suit that allows folks to directly contact you with side quests you can complete for extra experience. I'm sure Genki vets all the requests sent, but that is just a recipe for trolling. It's a miracle this feed isn't flooded with racial slurs and shitposting. But gotta say, this one is sort of tricky to recommend immediately. Just as Miles is a smaller Spider-Man, this game is a smaller Spider-Man. The plot is similar, the busy work is similar, the challenges are similar, traveling through New York is similar, but there's less of it. Just a smaller package across the whole board. But the replayability is still just as high with different costumes to unlock, New Game Plus, and extra difficulties. Harlem is lively with the same social activity as before, and if you're not in the mood to use the Mach 7 train station, web-slinging to get around the city is just as stimulating as last time. I can never get sick of this, there's just no way. I don't think it'd be wise to start with this game since it does follow up on the first adventure, but assuming you don't care for the story and maybe you thought the original game was a little bloated, well, you could look at Miles Morales as a diet alternative. In fact, that's a good way of putting it. It's Diet Spider-Man. All the taste with zero screwball. Again, at base, the game is being sold for $50 as opposed to the usual $60. Or is it a usual $70 now? Maybe that'll soften the blow if you're on the fence. I can see this game getting a major price drop not too long after release though. But as is, I think that's a reasonable price given the production values and content. As always, I'll see you guys for the next video. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask if you decide to go outside. Have yourselves a fantastic night, and take care.